From WHYY, it is Hittin season. Hey there, podcast pals. I'm John Stolnis from The Good Phight. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at John Stolnis. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about the Phillies-Yankees series from over the weekend, but we're recording on Monday night, so they're playing a game against the dreadful White Sox and losing as we speak right now with Christopher Sanchez on the mound. So we'll dive into some of the on-field stuff, but really what everybody's talking about is the trade deadline, some big news with some potential targets for the Phillies here over the last couple of days, including here on Monday night, the best hitter on the potentially on the trade market may be off the market. We'll kind of have to wait and see how that goes, but we'll talk about all of that. So trade deadline latest, and we're also going to get into what has become a really big and developing story in baseball, the Phillies versus Rob Manfred. Man, this story just grows another leg each day. So we'll get into all that here on this edition of Hittin Season. Liz is excited. Liz is excited for Bryce Harper and the Phillies versus Rob Manfred. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. But before we do that, you can follow her on the X and the Blue Sky at Liz Roscher. She is, of course, the editor of SABR's Baseball Research Journal. Hello, Liz.
I don't think Bryce Harper has ever been cooler to me personally. He's never been cooler than when he's holding a bat and swearing at Rob Manfred in the Phillies clubhouse in the name of labor. Like, if you're here talking about a salary cap, get out. That's beautiful.
Yeah, he's playing your song.
Like, he is now the coolest. He's all, it's all for me. Let's just not pretend. He's doing it all for me.
He was playing your song. It is and we're going to get to this later. So I had a little wry comment that I was going to mention. A good one. It's an interesting, something I'm noticing here with Major League Baseball players, but I want to punt that towards the last part of the show when we really dive into this. We roll up our sleeves on it because there is a lot to get to with this story. It is a big, big story. Justin Klugh also joining us here on the Roundtable edition of the podcast. Follow him on Blue Sky at Justin Klugh. Of course, you can follow all of his work at Baseball Prospectus, as well as our Hittin Season Patreon podcast, The Dirty Inning and Absolutely Hammered. Justin, how are you doing, bud?
3 episodes of The Dirty Inning this month for your enjoyment,
Man.
if you're a patron over there. On Friday, I asked...
sleep, my friend. Gee whiz.
Very poorly. I asked our friend Tim Jackson from Baseball Prospectus on Friday to add a numerical value to various scenarios of their likelihood.
Yes.
1 being not likely, 10 being extremely likely. And the last thing I asked him was a numerical odd for Otto Kemp to be named the NLCS MVP.
I heard that.
And he said a non-zero number. I can't remember what it was. It might have been 2, might have been as high as 2.5.
Higher than I would have gone. Yep.
And we just watched Otto Kemp's first multi-home run game in the major leagues from out of nowhere. Just because he was seeing the ball that day. So I'm just saying that non-zero chance exists for a reason. And as someone excited by anomalies in baseball, I think we're about to stumble upon another one.
You know, it's interesting. I was watching him, and nobody else is going to remember this player. But he's a guy who played in the late 80s. He reminds me so much of Chris James. Again, no one's going to know who that is. But like the stance, the mustache, the type of build, the numbers, the way he hits, it was it's a carbon copy of Chris James from when Chris James was with the Phillies in the late 80s. He took over for Mike Schmidt at third base after Schmidt retired, and then was traded, I think, in the John Kruk deal that brought Randy Reddy and John Kruk to the Phillies back in 1989. So I don't know. Little Otto Kemp was good to see this weekend in New York. If he can start hitting the major league fastball, it's always been kind of velocity has been the issue with Kemp, even in AAA, but being able to turn around some fastballs, that will start to get the ball out of the ballpark a little bit more for him, make him a little bit more impactful. That was a lot of fun. And really, guys, go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to say, I can't wait till I'm old enough to make up players. I remember seeing Jasper Whiskey Tooth play at Shibe Park as a boy. Just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Played 2 games.
It's Chris James. It's not
no
Jasper
teeth
Whiskey
whatsoever.
Tooth. Come on. Goodness gracious.
Used to flap his gums in Morse code instead of talking. Anyway, go ahead.
Listen, Hittin Season fans, email us, hittinseason@billypenn.com.
Email us your Chris James memories.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Tell me your favorite Chris James story. I'll read them live on the air. All right, that's how we're gonna do this.
What I want is for everyone to make up a player and create their own memory and send it to us.
That would be fun too. And you know what? We're going to need some content before too long. So send that our way. It's hittinseason@billypenn.com for sure. And you can always email us or, record a voice memo on your phone and email that to us and we'll play it on the podcast. Not enough of you people have taken advantage of that opportunity. You need to do that. Hittinseason@billypenn.com. All right, let's talk about the Phils on the field before we start talking about trade deadline stuff. Phils take 2 out of 3 in New York over the weekend. Really dominated the Mets in the first 2 games of the series. The offense really did well. Bryce Harper, Justin's already shaking his head. No, we don't. They did in the first 2 games.
It's fine. Just keep going.
We're gonna skip on past that, and we're gonna get right to the disappointment of Sunday as Zach Wheeler was unable to close out a series sweep of the Yankees. Well, it's been a little bit of a rough go for Zach in his first 2 starts after the All-Star break. And, for Zach Wheeler, a rough 2 starts is, oh gosh, he gave up 4 runs in 6 innings, or he gave up 2 runs in 6 1/3, but didn't look all that good doing it. That's kind of when Zach Wheeler's going badly, that's about as bad as it gets for Zach Wheeler. And I know I've seen some stuff online, is Zach Wheeler okay? And I think he's fine, guys. I think he's just fine. But, obviously we'll see how things go. But overall, a good series in New York. And now you've got 3 against the White Sox in Chicago, one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in baseball. Really, we've said this every time the Phillies take on an opponent like this. Justin, there's no reason they shouldn't sweep this team. There's absolutely zero reason the Phillies shouldn't roll into Chicago and sweep the White Sox in 3 games. But we just finished 6 innings or through 5.5 innings here on Monday night, and it's a 4-2 White Sox lead. That will make a series win in New York a little less palatable on a Tuesday morning, won't it?
Well, it'll continue to be a further mystery of what this team is. And if you were the person who needed to make decisions as to what this team needs in the crucial weeks ahead, and you watch them lose 3 series, including one to the Angels, and then win 2 series against the Red Sox and Yankees, and then lose a series to the White Sox, you'd be like, I don't know what we can add to this team that's going to change how they do this, because they seem to go about it in a very perplexing manner.
We're all over the place.
Like they can win or lose to anybody just about any time. So, yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about that very same idea today, that this is another one of those series where there's no reason to lose any of these games, and I really couldn't come up with a reason other than bad luck that the Phillies should lose to the Chicago White Sox, who would be the worst team in baseball if the Colorado Rockies didn't exist. And that includes the White Sox just like seeing the ball one night and hitting kind of well. That's a form of luck at this point. The White Sox don't do that, so it would have to be luck, and it would be bad for the Phillies, so it would just be bad luck. There's no reason. So, or something like the Phillies, just somebody who's supposed to be doing well doesn't do well, as we're seeing with Chris Sanchez tonight, which is unfortunate. He's not, doing poorly. It's just this is a recurring pattern now of the Phillies' biggest strength not being as reliable. And I'm not saying that as a critique of the pitching staff. It's more just like, this is what's going to happen. If you rely so much on this one aspect of your team to win games, then when they have anything less than a perfect night, it's going to go a little rougher for you. But hey, we've seen the offense pull through 4 of the last 6 games. That's been a nice little change for this offense and the way they operate. So, still got some time left tonight. We don't have to start saying they lost this series yet.
Sure. Yeah, and Liz, that's a great point, because the offense really did come alive, and they started to come alive against Boston at home, but really in these first 2 games against New York, 1 through 4, and really I guess more 1 through 5, but I mean, you had the big 4 were really performing against the Yankees. You had big home runs from Harper, big home runs from Schwarber, tons of doubles from those guys. You had Trey Turner continuing to do his thing out of the leadoff spot, just getting multiple hits a game. And the big story really of the last month is JT Real Muto's reemergence as an actually good hitter in the middle of this lineup. I really didn't think that we were going to see this from him this year. I really, you'd like to see it sooner than June and July, but, it's here now. And you just see what a difference JT Real Muto hitting well in the middle of this lineup. What an unbelievable difference that makes for this team, for this lineup, for the depth of it, to be able to kind of have another right-handed hitter in there that can actually get to pitches, that can drive the ball. He's been so important, and in the first 2 games of the series, he continued to do so against the Yankees.
Since June 1st, he's been hitting .333.
No.
And that's like better than the JT that we've known, last year and of course earlier this year. Like he was hitting 223 on June 1st. He's now hitting 273 coming into Monday night's game. Like that's huge. That's like it's everyone says this and I hate it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's like they've traded for another hitter.
No, that's a great point. Absolutely.
Because he just came out of nowhere because I had written him off because he did not look good at the plate. He didn't look lost. That's the thing. He didn't look lost. He was just bad. Yeah. He was just not doing well. And so I didn't think it was improper for me to just write him off and focus on everyone else. But it's been incredibly impressive. And he's had an incredible season physically as well with defending the plate. And he might miss a pop-up now and then, but he's looked great. He has that leaping play recently that I thought was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, in the loss on Sunday when a relay throw from Johan Rojas to try and throw a runner out at the plate it was up high. Real Muto skied into the air to grab it with his glove and then somehow managed to apply the tag and get the runner out at home plate to turn the double play. It was a tremendously athletic play. And remember all that talk in the beginning of the season, Justin, how JT Real Muto was going to rest more, wasn't going to play as many games behind the plate. We're going to see a lot more Rafael Marchand. Yeah, you get JT Real Muto off his feet. I'm going to give Rob Thompson some credit here when a lot of fans don't like to do that. He's recognizing how hot JT Real Muto is and keeping him in the lineup as long as he's hitting like this.
Yeah, I was going to say, in our defense, they said that. We didn't
yes, they did.
That up. They said that was going to happen. So I think it's fine. I think it's fine that it's not happening. I mean, hey, the less you have to play your backup catcher, the better off your lineup's going to be. That's at the end of the day, even the best backup catcher is not going to be somebody you want to be playing more often. I think I was the same as everybody, that we're all kind of waiting for some of these guys to fall off a cliff. But the catcher you expect to deteriorate perhaps a little faster. But Real Muto's always kind of set himself apart like that, where he's just always been a more complete athlete who happens to also be a catcher. So I think that we're seeing this now is, it shouldn't really be surprising, though I think everybody's kind of a little bit caught off guard by the fact that that we're talking about him at this point in the season, that he's become this focal point in the offense. I just wish the Phillies could just get like more than 3 of these guys hot at the same time so we could see the true depth of this lineup. But unfortunately, that's been one of their issues, is that, Harper may be playing absolutely out of his mind and perhaps even just passed through some sort of portal to become a younger version of himself. I don't know. It's just something inside of him is on fire right now. And it's like, but Schwarber, obviously, and Real Muto have really been like absolutely crushing it. And you said absolutely that the top 1 through 4 were really coming through when this team was exploding offensively. It's what you need. It's what you, unfortunately, it's the kind of season where this kind of success it's obviously super helpful and it's what you want to see. But you can't help but wonder, okay, but like, how long are we sustaining this? And you got to just see them like rack up some series wins on the offense if the starting pitching is going to be a little more imperfect lately, a little more human. And having a bat like Real Muto's is going to let you do that.
And I think in our hearts, we have to just accept the fact that they're not going to sustain it. They'll go through a valley again, and then it'll surge again. Like, I mean, that's
get ahead of it. Get ahead of your feelings.
Yeah, that's right.
Meet yourself there.
Guard your heart, I think is how some people like to put it, But I have seen also, Liz, that with JT Real Muto's resurgence, and, they're going to get Alec Boehm back at some point, but I know a lot of fans were prioritizing a bat over getting a stud closer. And I've always been of the mind that really I think they're kind of equal. But the sense has been that with Real Muto starting to hit better and Harper starting to hit better, that the offense appears to be more like what we thought it was going to be. So is the need as great to go out and get a true difference maker in the lineup? Do you see JT, because you talked about JT Real Muto, the way he's playing, it's like adding a new player. So do you feel the same way that, hey, it's kind of like they've gone out and gotten a player? So if you're going to go in any one direction, definitely go towards the relief pitchers, and maybe we don't need as much offense as we thought we did a month ago.
reluctant to say. I mean, that's
No,
what I
go
said.
ahead, Liz. Go ahead. You said he was like acquiring a new hitter. Go ahead. Say
Will
they don't
you
need
shut
another hitter.
up? Just credit. I said I hate saying that because I do hate saying it, and it's not actually a real thing. It does feel like you've got another hitter, but what's happened is one of your bad hitters has started to hit better. I'm reluctant to say that they don't need a bat, but they really do need someone in the bullpen. Like, they really need someone in the bullpen. They've got, like, it's a parade of samey bearded white guys they've got in that bullpen, and it's not working out well. I would like them to improve the bullpen, but I think if the right deal comes along, I think Dombrowski wouldn't blink. He would absolutely take it. If, he's just feeling guys out and, talking to other GMs and whoever it is that answers the phone over there, talking, and finding out who might be available. If it's someone he wants and someone he thinks who could make a difference and the price isn't going to hurt the Phillies that much, he'll do it. But I don't think he'll do that in lieu of a bullpen arm. Because if there are any left.
No, I agree with that. I think Dave Dombrowski's priority certainly is getting a bullpen arm, and I want to talk more about the trade deadline specifically in just a second. But I guess my overall question is, after this series in New York and with the way they played against Boston, two very good American League teams, and of course we're in the midst of this massive interleague schedule deal. Have we seen anything in these last two series that's changed your sense of urgency at the trade deadline, Justin? Or are we kind of still right where we were coming into this last weekend?
I mean, the main difference here is that, we've, not to repeat myself, but Sanchez and Wheeler have looked, pretty human, but you're not really going to do anything to adjust. Oh my gosh, our two best starters had rough starts. We need to acquire a starting, but no. So I think your priorities are the same. And what we've had laid out for us by the Inquirer, by the Athletic, is that the Phillies know they need, or they could use both bullpen help or a new bat in the lineup that can play outfield and, preferably a righty and all those specifications. But at the end of the day, they're prioritizing the bullpen help. And part of me, obviously I want to see them acquire somebody who can help out there. But part of me is just like, all right, so like it's up to this mystery person who may not be, a high-end reliever, and David Robertson are going to save the Phillies bullpen this year. Because that's still... Are we expecting a trickle-down effect on, like, the rest of the guys who've been struggling? Because, I know Max Lazar's been good lately. Orion Kerkering had a streak where he was okay. Matt Strom was better earlier in the season. But a lot of these guys, almost all of these guys, every one of these guys has had a time where they looked okay, or hey, this could work, and then, it just fell apart, and we have the bullpen we have. So I understand the priority there. But the way it was outlined today by, I think it was a Matt Gelb story, was that, they want to prioritize a high leverage reliever, but that might come down to them actually looking, not bargain bin, but like trying to do something that doesn't cost them a ton of prospects so that they could use those prospects to acquire the bat they also need. But that requires a lot of things to kind of fall into place. And since the last time we even talked about this, Felix Bautista's come off the board with an injury. Emmanuel Clase's off the board with his issues. The Rays pulled back Pete Fairbanks a little bit. They said they weren't super interested in trading him. So a lot of the names we've even talked about aren't even really super available for the Phillies anymore. And we've heard that they checked in on Steven Kwan, and they checked in on Luis Robert Jr., and they checked in on Eugenio Suarez, and that doesn't super mean anything. It means, okay, we're considering things, but, we're just making phone calls. So I don't think anything too much changed. And when you saw this team lose 2 games in their last 6, they went 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position, and the bullpen didn't help. So what's new about that? Kind of nothing. The same guy, a lot of the same guys are out there, but fewer, and the Phillies still have the same problems. So, make your move. You got a couple of days left.
Yeah, and let's dive into some trade deadline stuff as we're recording here on Monday evening. Thursday's the trade deadline, so only a few days left. We have not seen any major moves. We've seen some minor moves get done here and there. Just some, I think, just some of the real lower level type guys who I don't even know.
What are you saying? A Rays, Brewers, Marlins trade isn't super engaging for you? You're not grabbing the edge of your seat. But who did we lose from the Miami farm system? Tell me now.
Why is anyone trading for Chris Paddock? Like, someone explain to me why
Chris Paddock's still in baseball. Who knew?
How does that phone call go? Does somebody call up and suggest, hey, I know, I'm just curious if Chris Paddock might be available. You know, he's got a 7.25 ERA. Are you feeling like you could move him? Like, what are we doing?
What have you heard about Paddock?
Into a gopher hole.
Yeah,
we need to replace him. We can't get him out.
As far as I know, MLB trade rumors did not have the Chris Paddock trade rumor section on the side of their site.
Our AA affiliate accidentally 3D printed a bunch of bobbleheads that kind of look like him, so we want to acquire him and send him down there and have Chris Paddock bobblehead night. Can you help us out, please?
Yeah, that's pretty much the only reason why you would do that type of deal. So we did get some news here on Monday that could be problematic. Some big names that had been, that could have been interest to the Phillies are not going to be available, it doesn't seem. Emmanuel Clase is one of them. Placed on the non-disciplinary suspension list. I don't know exactly what they call it, but it has to do with some kind of gambling investigation going on in Major League Baseball. But Emmanuel Clase is not going to pitch through the month of August, I don't believe. He will not get traded now. And it looked like, from what I was seeing, Cleveland was likely to deal him to someone somewhere. So Clase is off the board. Felix Bautista's injury with the Baltimore Orioles is likely to keep him out for a number of weeks. It is highly unlikely anyone's going to trade for Bautista now. So those are two pretty high-end relievers who were probably going to get traded at the deadline. That thins the amount of relievers. Now, there's a good amount of relievers available, but that does thin the herd a little bit, and of course will drive the asking price up on the ones who are available. And then in one of the biggest pieces of potential news, and as we're recording this, we don't know any more than this, but Eugenio Suarez in the ninth inning of a game against the Tigers hit on the hand by a fastball and had to leave the game. Torey Lovullo after the game said he's getting x-rays on his hand, but it's really tender, and they're right now considering him day to day. But of course, if he's out for any length of time, he's a rental. Like, you need him to be on the field. So even if he's going to miss 3 or 4 weeks, are you giving up much to go sign Eugenio Suarez if you're only going to have him for the last 4.5 weeks of the season? Maybe, depending on the price. And maybe he's out longer than that with an injury to the hand, especially for a guy who's a power hitter, getting a broken hand. We don't know that that's what it is yet, so we're going to wait and see. But these are three potentially really big names that two of them are off the list in Clase and Bautista, and Eugenio Suarez, we don't know just yet. But it's not easy to swing a deal, and we're kind of seeing why stuff happens in these days leading up to the trade deadline.
It's bad timing, I'll say, but in reality, it's great timing because the Phillies did not trade for any of them before we knew what was going to happen, or before they knew what was going to happen, especially with Emmanuel Clase. That is bad news.
Crazy.
That's real bad news. And with Felix Bautista, what are you laughing at, Justin?
I'm laughing because when Gene Mauch was a player, he went to the Montreal Royals, and they were having an insane gambling problem on that roster. And their way to solve that problem was to hang up a bunch of signs around the stadium that said "No gambling," and that was it. That's how they did that.
That's essentially
maybe
what
maybe the Guardians should try that.
In place of the signs that say "No gambling," there are gambling ads everywhere.
That's
so
right.
MLB's doing
only
a
gamble
job.
here. Yeah.
It's bad news all around. I mean, I could look at some names, but like those are the names I had been looking at. I mean, my only thing is if Baltimore isn't going to deal Bautista, they also won't have him likely because he's having some shoulder issues, which is not great. Guys don't bounce back from that often, and
this has gone from a lost year to a cursed year for Baltimore.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe it's the fact that they did nothing last offseason besides let go of guys that were good and pay guys that were less good. That's my interpretation of what's happened to them. But I think the Phillies should take advantage of things that are bad with them and see what they're willing to take Because, man, the Orioles, Mike Elias over there loves Phillies cast-offs. He's still employing at least one, if not two. Sir Anthony Dominguez, who blew a game for them recently, one that I was at. So if they're interested in giving up Adley Rutschman for a couple of low-level prospects, I'd be into that. Or maybe
it's
Cedric
always worth
Mullins.
A call. Well, I think he's hurt now too. So
really?
that's
He just made a great catch, like in the outfield. My husband showed that to me a few minutes before I came up to record. He made an incredible home run robbery in center field. I'm like, that would be a cool guy.
I think the best way to describe the Phillies' approach here is isn't that they're trying to go cheap or that they're trying to be cute, even though those are ways that I will describe them if I become angry and dissatisfied with the moves they make. I think risk-averse is the word, which is a difficult thing to be in baseball, especially at this point when clearly, we're in the middle of a pretty chaotic patch for baseball in general, where a lot of the guys that you've been talking about for weeks are starting to suffer these kind of like random incidents that are impacting their ability to be traded or their trade value overall. And it's a tough time to be risk averse because there's just some inherent risk, not just some, but like a normal amount of inherent risk with every deal the Phillies could possibly make based on who they're giving up and who they want to get. And they've never kind of been more risk averse than now. We saw that, coming into this, they were like, well, we're not super interested in a rental because that does kind of up the risk of any deal that they could make. And they want more guys that have like team control and that they can consider part of the future of the team. So I feel like they're just being careful, and that can come back and bite you. But like so far, they haven't like pulled the trigger on anything and wound up with a guy who like just got hurt. Who were we talking about? That Byron Buxton, John. You were which obviously when he's on the field is an incredible player, but a guy that I would have absolutely no faith could stay healthy. I feel the same way about Cedric Mullins right now. And I think, any kind of interest, like I said, we know the Phillies have checked in or been, connected to or whatever, Eugenio Suarez, not in a serious way, but just in an informal way. Any non-zero chance the Phillies were going to go after him has evaporated with that ball going off his hand tonight. They have absolutely, that's too much, I would say. Yeah.
There is an update. There is an update on that. Evan Petzold of the Detroit Free Press said that there is no fracture for Eugenio Suarez. X-rays came back negative, according to Suarez himself. He spoke to reporters after the game, hit in the right index finger. So no break. So at the very least, maybe that still makes him somebody who is available at the deadline. That may not talk teams out of it, but obviously teams are going to be watching very closely whether he's in the lineup the next couple of days. Frankly, the Diamondbacks, I think, would be dumb to put him in the lineup any of the next 2 days before the trade deadline. You don't. Why put him out there and risk him injuring it more? If it's not broken, just keep him out. Don't put him back in the lineup.
Can he even?
One of the guys we're watching.
Can he even grip a bat with like an index finger the size of a sausage?
Well, we don't know how big it is, but we'll see.
You get hit on the hand. My guess is that thing swells right up.
Yeah, it's going to get swolled. There's no doubt about it. But X-rays being negative, that swelling can go down.
I'm sure this didn't dissuade everybody, but at the same time, not fractured doesn't mean not hurt.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if it's a bad bone, I don't want to. I'm not a doctor. We'll see what happens. But
none of us are doctors.
I think the fact that it's not broken means he's still in the mix.
There's a reason that information got telegraphed out as soon as they had it.
Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So one of the guys we are watching this week as the Phillies are playing the White Sox is, of course, Luis Robert Jr., who we have been talking about since last year. His name continues to swirl. It sounds almost like a certainty that the White Sox are going to deal him. And I don't know what the White Sox are going to get for him. He has a 649 OPS over the last 2 seasons, which out of 269 qualified players ranks 233rd. So that's pretty bad. He has an 827 OPS from 2020 to 23, however. And is batting, and this month, here in the month of July, is batting .325 with a .926 OPS. Against left-handed pitching this year, he has a .966 OPS. It's .529 against righties, although he's hit righties better this month as well. Overall, since June 10th, 267 average, 357 on base, 477 slugging, and 834 OPS with 5 homers, 3 doubles in 27 games. Tanner Banks, who pitched for the White Sox and was Robert's teammate, spoke highly of him this week and basically said he is a guy who would thrive with a change of scenery. So everybody's giggling about this.
You know what I'm going to say.
I think of all of the bats available, I think this is the most likely bat that the Phillies will add at the trade deadline. Justin, Liz, what do you guys think?
I don't think that's an ice cold take or anything. I really love Stephen Kwan. The Guardians are just in too good of a position as a trade partner for, I think, the Phillies to seriously interact with them. They can sit around and wait for whatever deal strikes their fancy, and the Phillies may not even have the ability to beat the best deal they get. So if they even feel like trading Stephen Kwan, so that's a nice idea, but I'm not sure how likely it is. Like I said, I think even without a reported fracture, Suarez is now, A, probably too expensive, and B, a little more of a risk for the Phillies. So when you're talking about bats, what you're saying doesn't sound wrong. I think we saw tonight, he's putting on a little show. He had a nice diving catch in center field. He's hit the ball hard a couple of times.
Hit a home run. Robert hit a the go-ahead 2-run home run in the game.
Two-run home, yeah. So, he's making sure that his presence is known, which I'm sure he's doing for the Phillies specifically.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the day, you can't not say he's a change of scenery candidate. The scenery in Chicago is terrible for the White Sox. Anybody is going to be in a better mood leaving the White Sox.
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, every team in the league knows that. Every team in the league would be a good fit as long as they are not the White Sox for Luis Robert Jr. See, what else is Tanner Banks going to say? Oh, that guy. Yeah, nice guy, but ultimately I think he would be bad no matter where he went.
Well, no, but see, here's the thing.
Head case, not a fan. I know what you're saying. It's just, I'm not even against this trade at all. I'm just saying, looking at the numbers he's putting out there, it's clearly he's having an issue. Is Philadelphia going to be the place where those issues get corrected? Totally possible. Completely, totally possible. I'm just thinking about the initial reaction. There's people who are already totally sold on him, and there are people that are totally out on him. He's a polarizing player at this point. You gotta believe that his ceiling is as high as it was at one point, and that he can return to it. And the difference is just being a part of a whole other culture, being a part of a pennant race, playing in the playoffs, being in a lineup where he can be protected, where there's other hitters. I was just sitting here watching Chase Meadroth have a key at bat, and I thought, if the guy who tried to catch a pop-up with his forehead is the one that extends this lead for the White Sox, this is an unspeakable failure already. That's who's in the lineup with Luis Robert Jr. So, yeah, I think it's totally on the table. I don't think Tanner Banks is wrong. I'm just also find it funny. What if he had said the opposite? It was just like, oh, yeah, he's a great teammate, but ultimately, pass.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think the quotes that I read from Robert felt to me like he went further than he needed to stump for Luis Robert Jr., Liz. I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. And I don't think that
How much sway do you think Tanner Banks has with the front office? Is it on the same level as Bryce Harper?
I'm going to say who is that?
But when you're talking about a change of scenery guy, part of that is character. Part of that is there stuff that's going on off the field, or what is his mentality off the field? What kind of guy? How would he be different if he went from, like you said, Justin, just an untenable situation in Chicago to a place like Philadelphia? We're seeing all kinds of guys, really good players, struggle this year on really bad teams. I mean, you have Brenton Doyle in Colorado. You have the kid in Pittsburgh,
Reynolds.
Brian Reynolds, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's a few of these guys who are on these going nowhere teams and playing like they're going nowhere. And so Luis Robert Jr., this is going back to last year, but they've been awful. Maybe they were the worst team in baseball history a year ago, Liz. So that's why I think, Tanner Banks, if he got in that question, could have said something that did not generate a 2-paragraph quote. But he didn't. He really, it seemed to me, was stumping for Luis Robert Jr. And I think I don't know if that sways you anymore, if that sways Phillies fans anymore. I certainly think he's, over the last, month and a half, been playing much better too.
That's kind of like what Banks said is kind of as far as most players will go. in bad mouthing their previous team. You know, about Luis Robert Jr., he would really benefit from a change of scenery. And to me, that says he is miserable over there, as is, I'm going to guess, anybody with any shred of talent. I don't know if, what Banks said is going to make a difference in the end. I am undecided on him, on Robert personally. I'm not really sure if it depends on what the White Sox want. And I'll say they are, again, led by someone who I don't consider to be terribly smart.
Sure.
But I feel like the White Sox might want a little bit more for him than the Phillies are willing to give up because of that potential, even though there's absolutely no way they can make good on it.
All right, with the trade deadline 3 days away, let's get our official. I don't know about. We don't have to make like official predictions, but let's get our final thoughts on this trade deadline. Lay our cards on the table right here and now on our roundtable episode of the podcast before the Phillies have done anything of significance. I'll go first, just so you guys can think about it for a second. How what you guys think is going to happen. I don't see the Phillies going and getting. I think the Phillies are going to get one of the Pirates relievers, whether it's Dennis Santana or David Bednar, and I think it's going to be David Bednar. I think he is really pitching a whole lot better since the end of April. His overall numbers this year look really good. He had a bad year last year. Every other year since then has been really good. So I think David Bednar is going to be the guy. I think that's probably going to be the only reliever that they sign. And I do predict Luis Robert Jr. will be a Philly before the week is out. I think he may even be playing a game for the Phillies against the White Sox this week. We'll see. Maybe not. But, I don't think the Phillies leave town without Luis Robert Jr. on the plane back. Now, who do the Phillies give up? I don't think the Phillies have to give up anybody from, anybody of tremendous value in order to get him either. I think you're probably, you're looking at your sixth or seventh best prospect. And then maybe an interesting pitcher from somewhere else in the farm system. If I got to get, I don't know that I would even give up Mick Abel for Luis Robert Jr. though. I think if I'm thinking about like what kind of prospect I'm giving away, I'm not trading away Arun Escobar. I'm not trading Eduardo Taid. I'm not trading Mick Abel, but whoever that next guy is, right? Who's that number? Is it, Gabriel Rincones? Is it, or whoever would be that like 6, 7, 8 prospect? I'll make that the centerpiece. That'll be the guy. But I think that's kind of what we're looking at here with the Phillies. I think they add an arm, and I think they add a bat, and I think that's how this week is going to go out. That's my official prediction. Justin, what about you?
I'm glad to hear you say they'll add a bat, because you were kind of coming down on that idea about that, just potentially not even happening, which I can see that as realistic as well. But yeah, I'm gonna think more positively, and I do want and think that there is a scenario where it is just one reliever and a bat. I think you're right that there's a couple other factors here that they're going to consider part of our new revamped bullpen, and that includes getting Aaron Nola back. That includes whatever happens with Andrew Painter. That includes getting Jose Alvarado back for a couple of weeks. I think they're going to use all those smaller things to kind of build around the acquisitions of Robertson and whoever this other guy is, and really just be like, okay, now look, see, it is a different bullpen. We just didn't make a bunch of trades to get there. But I see a name like Ryan Helsley, honestly, being pretty likely for this Phillies team as well to acquire. I don't think you got to give too much up in that situation either. And you get a high leverage arm back that can get you out of some jams in late innings, and you can really rely on at the back of your bullpen. And yeah, I'm going to say Robert Jr. as well, honestly, because I've already talked myself out of some of the guys I've really, in a more fantasy world, wanted them to go after. But I think he is a realistic acquisition. I think the White Sox are kind of easy to deal with. I don't think they, are making any kind of high level demands and pounding the table. I think they kind of negotiate you with a bunch of dead fish handshakes and dead eyes with no lights behind them. So I'm not worried about negotiating a trade with the White Sox. And I think it's more realistic based on how the Phillies want to play it, which is, again, not taking on anything that they feel is too much of a risk in a game that is full of it.
Liz, lay your cards on the table. Trade deadline. What are we doing?
All right, I'll be the downer here and say I think they'll just pick up some relievers. That's what I think. I think they'll just grab relievers, at least one of the Pirates guys, because they're very good. And they're pitching for nothing. So it would be great if they could pitch for something and also be that good. And I'll just say maybe I think they'll be priced out of the bats. As much as I'd love them to not be, I think everyone knows who's good in the Philly system and who's sort of a wild card. And I think that's why they will be priced out, because everyone's going to want the top guys, and the Phillies have not been willing to deal those top guys. I mean, maybe now is the time that they do it. Maybe now is the moment. Here is the place. But
Yeah.
I could also very much see it not being that way. So my prediction is they grab at least one good reliever from the Pirates and maybe another one from somewhere else.
And that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. If they end up walking out of here with two really good relief arms, it'll be disappointing for those of us who wanted to see this team add more offense, but there really aren't many bats. I mean, Luis Robert Jr., I think a couple other guys that fit are a couple of the Angels guys, Joe Adell and Taylor Ward. Again, neither of those guys are winning you the World. Like, they're not the World Series difference maker, but they make your lineup better. They give you some additional power and pop, and would require a different package, depending on the player. But I agree. If it's two relievers and it's not and no outfielder or no field position player, then you ride with the offense that you've got and hope that Real Muto keeps it up, that Castellanos delivers in some big spots, that when Alec Boehm comes back, he swings a bat. And I'm not expecting much from Brandon Marsh or Bryson Stott and whoever else, if Max Kepler's still getting at bats, heaven help us. But, Justin Crawford coming up. And I'm telling you, they're going to move Mick Abel to the bullpen probably. They're going to move Luzardo to the bullpen at some point, probably late in September. We've been talking about it. They're leaving the door open a crack for Andrew Painter to be a bullpen arm. So, I mean, you could add some bullpen pieces that way. We'll see what Dave Dombrowski does this week here over the next few days, and really what baseball does, because, again, nothing's moving yet, even though there are only a couple of days left here in the trade deadline. All right. Bryce Harper takes on Rob Manfred. This story came out over the weekend. You guys talked about it on the Friday edition of the podcast a little bit when it was first just broadcast on the bandwagon that there was this team meeting that Rob Manfred met with the Phillies, and Rob Manfred has been meeting with every team apparently, but that this meeting with the Phillies turned contentious. Nick Castellanos gave some quotes, and I think he joked at the time, saying, well, nobody got hurt or something like that. Well, turns out maybe there was a chance that someone could have gotten hurt, because during this meeting, ESPN's Jeff Passan reported on Monday that Bryce Harper and Rob Manfred went, quote, nose to nose, with Harper basically telling Rob Manfred that if you're here to talk about a salary cap, to get the bleep out of our clubhouse. And Manfred shot back, I'm not getting out of anywhere, and stayed to continue to, and it looked like those two guys were going at it. Nick Castellanos apparently helped diffuse the situation by asking some more questions about what Rob Manfred was there to talk about, the economics of the game. Long story short, Castellanos is talking to ESPN and talking to the bandwagon about what went on in this meeting. And then you find out a little while later that Mark DeRosa, who is an MLB Network host in the mornings, he was the manager of Team USA for the World Baseball Classic and works for the MLB Network, which is owned by Major League Baseball, reportedly told 8 to 10 Phillies players that they ought to be careful how much they go after Rob Manfred. That Rob Manfred's a powerful guy, and apparently a lot of Phillies players reportedly took this badly, understandably so, seeing as like, hey, somebody from Major League Baseball employed by Major League Baseball is kind of threatening us with some possible retaliation if we don't ease up on Rob Manfred and do what he wants to do. And then Mark DeRosa gets mad, that's saying, I thought I had closer, I guess I misevaluated the relationship I have with Phillies players on that team. That he got out and said it was just a joke. I mean, Liz,
so many things to say.
There is so much to unpack from this meeting with the Phillies and Rob Manfred and how it has all come about over these last few days. Hit me with your thoughts. Let me hear you.
Well, the first thing is that I don't remember Harper ever being such a big union guy. In the last go round, he wasn't the Phillies union rep. He was. I don't remember him making any big public statements about it, and maybe that's because a salary cap was definitely, something that MLB wanted, but it wasn't their primary goal. And Manfred, while he never said the word salary cap during the meeting, according to Passan, that's exactly what he was talking about. And he was defining it as a way to, a threat to MLB's business and ways to grow the game. And Harper, and I think a few other players, saw directly through that for what it was, which is, crap. It's just a way to depress player salaries. And seeing him get so fired up about it, I mean, it made me feel good about where the players are, especially with the onset with so many former players just immediately, instead of being on the side of the players, which they were players, immediately going on to the side of management. I think players like Harper need to stand up and be, more about this and say, if you want your teams to get good players, a salary cap is not the way to do it. The teams have to be convinced to spend. Baseball shouldn't be bowing to the teams that don't want to spend any money. I have more to say on DeRosa, but I can stop there about Harper.
We can double back on DeRosa, but I guess, Justin, let me get your thoughts on because I think Liz is right. Harper's never been out there like this. And really, this wasn't supposed to probably be made public anyway. Like, this was said in the clubhouse.
Harper's actually specifically unhappy about it. I think there's a report on NBC Sports Philly a couple of hours ago where someone reported that he is not happy with, I'm going to guess, Nick Castellanos specifically for continuing to talk about what happened. But I feel like Castellanos knows it's important. But anyway, sorry, Justin.
Yeah, Castellanos, I mean, as far as there were quotes circulating today about him like predicting this situation that the players and management were going to wind up in, a couple years ago, just because he is a veteran player and he has a brain that works, and he's going to say whatever he wants to say. So, you can be mad at him all you want. I think Harper is more mad at Harper's very, very. I'm guessing here based on what we know, but more on what we don't, which is that I think Harper is very interested in absolutely nothing getting out there. I think he wants his image to be airtight. And I think he has seen just like, the climate of everything that, how easily guys and reputations can just get eaten up on social media, part of a news cycle, blah, blah, blah. Like we're all aware of how this stuff can, one little detail, one little story slips out and then that just gets run with and suddenly reporters are looking into stuff. And look, I think there's just a lot of stuff Bryce Harper thinks that he knows he's better off not everybody knowing. And in this particular case, he's probably upset that that there was a crack in the door and some whispers slipped out, and now people know a little bit about something that happened behind closed doors. So I think in general, he is upset about that. However, I mean, I agree with you guys. I've never heard him. He's kind of made a point not to appear vocal on too many issues other than who the Phillies sign next. Everything you hear, like that's a televised Harper quote, is generally safe for TV, is generally meant to be a part of a news cycle. So he's very meticulous in what gets out there. So I think what you're seeing is his inability to control the situation has led to some further frustration, but it's also great to see how frustrated he is. There are a bunch of Scott Boras quotes about
I was just looking at those.
About the Bryce Harper perspective and how he's watched, the amount of money that guys get when they sign as rookies shrink and shrink and shrink. And like he's seeing what that's doing and he cares about it. So if Rob Manfred's got this plan to go up to younger players and be like, hey, the veteran players don't have your best interests at heart. Oh, hey, by the way, union leadership, they just don't care about you at all. And you're not going to get any of this money. Harper's a guy you should be talking to. Because he's exactly who Rob Manfred says is your enemy, and apparently he is not. And that is now known by anybody who can read.
Yeah, and maybe that's why this has gotten so personal, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, the Scott Boras quotes to me, he's talking about Harper's been fighting the consequences of caps his whole life. He talked about the consequences that after 2 years after he was drafted, Byron Buxton got just a little over half of what he did when he was drafted. And 15 years after that, players still aren't receiving as much as he did in 2010. And I like that Boras's reflex here was to convince Harper that now this has gotten out, you are in front of this. So why not tell everybody you're in front of this? Why not make it apparent? Like the public is going to say what they say and think what they think. What really matters is what young players think. And that's really who those quotes were for. It was for the young players who don't know who's on their side. And Boras is trying to say, no, he's on your side. And there's some really good PRing and lawyering happening already, I could say, as far as the Mark DeRosa situation. But I like that he's taking this personally. Oh my God, I have so many thoughts on that. It's good to me that he's taking it personally, and he's now kind of okay with it being part of who he is in public. I don't think he's going to say anything to the media, but if more quotes come out from Scott Boras or other things, I'm excited to see what role he plays. He's got a lot of money, and the guys who have a lot of money are the ones that need to contribute to the strike fund. Because he said straight up to Rob Manfred, the players are not afraid to lose 162 games. And that's a big statement. That's a huge statement. And I feel good.
He's speaking for a lot of people when he says that, too.
Yes. And the only way he'd say that is if he knew, at least if he was sort of briefed and up to date on what's happening in the MLBPA. So he's one of the guys that'll have to step up and contribute a lot of money to the strike fund, because there are a lot of younger guys that do not make the money that he makes, that do not have the cushion that he has, including minor leaguers. So
I'll say this too.
There's a lot happening.
I think
here.
You're right about. Yeah, and I think you're right about all that, but I do wonder if one of the reasons why, oh my gosh, Bryce Harper, what are you doing at first base? This White Sox game has turned into a fiasco, by the way.
No.
So just in case anybody's wondering, it's 6-2 in the eighth, and the Phillies are playing like bad news bears out there.
Oh God,
it's fiasco time. But one of the things that I think might be one of the reasons Harper is not happy about this, and especially that quote about the 162 games, is we know how fans react to strikes or lockouts. And this would be a lockout, most likely. It would not be a player strike, but it'd be driven by players. And I think we are all on the side of the players not wanting a salary cap. A salary cap does not solve baseball's economic problems, does not do anything but suppress salaries. And frankly, if I'm speaking selfishly as a Phillies fan, prevents my team from spending whatever they want on players. And my team goes out there and spends lots of money on players, which is what you want your team to do. Every team should be operating the way the Phillies do and some of these other upper market teams. So no one in Philadelphia should want a salary cap. But players oftentimes are cast in the villain role when a season is missed. When baseball is missed, when baseball is not played, players oftentimes unfairly get the full brunt, or at least a large portion of the brunt of the blame. Now, I think this last time out with the lockout, the ownership, I think, took most of the heat. And I think maybe that tide is turning a little bit as I think more writers start to cover strikes and labor stoppages from a pro player perspective. I think we're starting to see that more as Major League Baseball has gone on over the years, and we've avoided a major strike since '94. But remember how damaging that strike was. Nobody wants that again. So when Harper's out saying, we're willing to give up 162 games to make sure that this doesn't happen, that's a quote I'm sure he probably doesn't want out there, because he doesn't want the fan base using that against him and against the players as a way of getting angry over missing a season of baseball, which is something that could happen.
But you mentioned the perfect way for him to fight it, which is, let's the Phillies have to spend, the Phillies have the ability to spend what they want now. If you want that to continue to happen, if you want, John Middleton to be allowed to spend whatever he wants, you don't want a salary cap. Now that it doesn't matter whether John Middleton wants one.
Right.
It doesn't matter at all whether he wants one. But Harper can say that, and other players can say that on teams that have been doing spending, to make sure they emphasize that their teams are good because there has been a lot of spending, and that the teams that are bad because they are not spending money. And a salary cap, you're right, John, would not fix that.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't fix the issues with the cable, with the local cable deals that teams are struggling to figure out. I mean, there's a lot of different things that baseball's economics are screwed up. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But a salary cap is not the answer. But we still have another season of baseball. But the labor negotiations are really going to start in next season, maybe even this offseason. The ball start getting. But right now, Rob Manfred's trying to take his side. The players' union is trying to stake out their sides of it. And for some reason, interestingly, the Phillies are at the center of it all right now here. And it's maybe a little bit of a distraction for this team as they're, here in late July trying to make a push for the playoffs. And I guess that's the last point on this, Justin, is like, could this be a distraction for this team, or they just have too many veterans for this to be a big distraction for them?
It better not. It better not.
I mean, they're losing 6-2 to the White Sox, for crying out loud. I'm saying they're distracted, but maybe the trade deadline can help distract them from the distraction.
It won't be long until that narrative is being pushed. If they lose this series to the White Sox, that will be pushed somewhere. Absolutely. But before we are completely out of time, I want to stop threatening to have comments about the Mark DeRosa quote and start having them. So, can you read the quote for us again, please?
I don't have it word for word in front of me, but to paraphrase, he told Phillies players that they could regret facing off against Rob Thomson because Rob Thomson has a lot of power, obviously, as the Major League Baseball commissioner. And then once that quote came out, Rob DeRosa took a shot at these Phillies players, essentially saying he was joking. I was just joking. And that now I guess I misidentified the relationship that I had with some of the players in that clubhouse.
Yeah. That second quote was, "Shame on me for thinking I had a better relationship with some of the players in there than I guess I do." So Mark DeRosa would sit on Rob Manfred's lap and scowl at everybody during meetings if Rob Manfred told him to. He is very much a part of the propaganda wing of MLB. He is on the league side. Shame on me for thinking I had a better relationship. That's what you say that's what you're coached to say when you are backtracking because you messed up, but you also don't want to give up the moral high ground that you think you have. Mark DeRosa is one of Rob Manfred's lackeys. He's management. He's on management's side. Yep. These guys walk into a room and think everything's the same, but in negotiations and conversations on labor, there is a layer of inherent, irreconcilable conflict over everything. I mean, look, maybe he said it as a joke to some guys that he knows, and some people overheard it and they didn't take it as one, but I just don't feel like that's very likely given Mark DeRosa's background. And I feel like he's a guy who is totally capable in the role that he has to walk into that room and say something like that, thinking that it's so tough and cool and intimidating that he's actually going to get these guys who are just making the commissioner feel silly to back down and feel bad about themselves. When what he's really doing is breaking the law, potentially.
Yeah. That's what he's doing, is breaking the law. Retaliation for union organizing and union activities is illegal, and threats of retaliation fall under that category. Every case for threats is different, but by and large, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to be like, the commissioner has a lot of power, don't fool around with him. That's a threat of retaliation. And you can't do that. And I'll at least give some applause to MLB's lawyers, who almost certainly called him yelling on the phone when this came out. Because if someone's going to do that, they don't want it to be Mark DeRosa. And him saying the comment I made was completely in jest, completely kidding, amongst 10 to 12 players. Guys were laughing, guys were joking. I'm sure they totally were.
This is my friends are laughing right off screen meme, but in a quote about union conflict.
Yeah. This is what he said. I had managed some of them with Team USA. I had played with Bryce in 2012, literally making a joke. Now that's exactly.
I bet Bryce really remembers that and remembers who. Oh right, Bryce Harper and Mike DeRosa, that famous pair from the 2012.
Years, that's right.
From the 2012 Washington.
Yeah.
Remember when Bryce Harper was getting promoted from the minor leagues, and everyone was like, "What does Mark DeRosa think about this?"
Right.
Yep, like that's telling him to say it was a joke is exactly what is a really smart move by MLB's lawyers. Because it makes the players look like they're too serious. But how it's being reported is this was a stupid thing for Mark DeRosa to do, and it was absolutely not a joke. It was absolutely not a joke. And that's why some of these guys have to stay away from the players and be careful of what they say. The commissioner's group of former players, I'd love to know what their official status is. Are they working for MLB? Is this a volunteer thing? How careful do they have to be about what they say when they're quote unquote listening to players and their feelings and going to report back to Rob Manfred honestly? Because if this incident tells the players overall in MLB anything, it's that you cannot trust former players. You cannot trust them when they're in your orbit. They are by and large not on your side anymore. And that's so depressing to me that as soon as they step out of the players' world, they're like, no, I'm all business now. Business. I need to make sure MLB's business is good. Like, no, you don't. You need to make sure the Phillies continue to win games, Jimmy Rollins, Ryan Howard, and Shane Victorino, because they're the team that keeps inviting you back for things and keeps hiring you to be special assistants. Your concern should be with the Phillies and how they're doing, not with, are the players kowtowing quickly enough to Rob Manfred and his demands for a salary cap? What can I tell Rob Manfred about, how angry the players are about this and the best way for him to circumvent that?
Well, let me say this. It's Middleton in the front office that invites these players back for these things. It has nothing to do with how well the team is playing or how good they are.
I know, but I'm saying
so that's why I wonder, like, where the loyalties lie of former players. A lot of the things that they do with the team are through the management and the officials who maybe think differently than the players. But we've also known we heard, all these crusty old players talking about new players, and with all the celebration on the we know that players who played in previous eras think that current baseball stinks, and the current baseball players don't come anywhere close to measuring up to what we did when we used milk cartons for gloves and we went out there on nothing but greenies with busted knees every day. You know what I mean? That's
the Jasper whiskey tooth era. Yeah, I remember.
I'd love to know if any of those former Phillies players I mentioned ever had the guts to go toe-to-toe with the commissioner, while holding a bat in their clubhouse, talking to the guy who doesn't sign their checks but decides whether or not they play baseball. My guess is no. Jimmy Rollins had the guts to say, we're the team to beat, which was pretty gutsy at the time, but he certainly didn't do what Bryce Harper did. And so unless any of these players have done something like that, I don't need to hear from them.
Well, we got to wrap things up on that note. We'll see how this thing shakes out. I do want to pass along one quick thing before we go, and that is Ryne Sandberg, former Phillies manager, some sad news, passed away here on Monday night at the age of 65. He'd been battling cancer for quite a long time. Of course, a former Phillies prospect who was traded away just before he became a National League MVP and a Hall of Famer. That Ryne Sandberg trade is always the reason that fans are nervous around trade deadline season, dealing prospects away. But he had a phenomenal career with the Cubs. His time in Philadelphia as a manager, not remembered well, but everybody who has interacted with him, I'm not one of them, has all said unanimously he seems to have been a really good guy. So Regardless, Ryan Sandberg, Major League great, passes away, 65 years old of cancer. That'll be my final thought. Final thoughts, Justin, for you to wrap things up?
I'll just reiterate that, 3 new episodes of The Dirty Inning over on the Hittin Season Patreon. It was a big month for The Dirty Inning. We have one episode on the Phillies being unable to score in Houston, which, boy, that feels like a million years ago that we were doing an episode based on a rough series in Houston that the current Phillies played. An episode on the 1952 All-Star Game as we close out the All-Star month for baseball here in July. And another episode about Turn It Around night in 1972 when the players just decided, you know what, we're tired of losing. Tonight at the stadium is Turn It Around night. We're going to turn stuff physically around and have like the ushers wear their hats backwards, and it's just going to fix everything. And they lost, and the season was terrible. So another great episode of The Dirty Inning. 3 of them over there for patrons over at the Hittin Season Patreon.
Great stuff. Patreon.com/Hittin Season is how you get there and find all that stuff. Liz, any final thoughts?
I've said all that I could say.
Okay. The Phillies did lose to the White Sox 6-2, so now 2 in a row. The Phillies still have not won 3 games in a row since June 20th. On that note, with just a few days left before the trade deadline, that will do it for this edition of Hittin Season. I'll be back with the midweek podcast. Maybe we'll have some deals done by then. And of course, any big trades, there'll be an emergency podcast with one or some of us on here to kind of analyze it and take you home before. And maybe that'll be the end of the week podcast you hear with Justin and Liz. But make sure you tell your family and friends to be listening this week. Should be a big week here in Phillies baseball world. Hittin Season can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you get your podcast. And you can also watch us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on, just do a search for Hittin Season and subscribe to the Hittin Season podcast there on YouTube as well. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time here on Hittin Season.